So, tenakoto katoa. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to today's space panel. It's the last one of three for creating opportunity through diversity in the New Zealand space industry. I'm Emmeline Pat Dahlstrom, an Edmund Hillary Fellow and co-founder of Space-Based, a social enterprise that is focused on catalyzing the space industry in New Zealand through education, entrepreneurship, and collaboration. In terms of my background, I had physics and earth and space science in university, but really spent 3 decades of my working career, mostly in program development operations, startup entrepreneurship, and educational management for space and tech industries in the US and in Europe. So on behalf of Space-Based, we're delighted to sponsor and host this series of diversity panels. So just some housekeeping. For the first part of this program, I'm going to be basically giving some lead questions to the panelists and starting a discussion. And then for the second part, we'll be answering questions that you field through the Q&A feature that's on your Zoom. If you do send in your questions, please feel free to either direct it to a specific panelist or kind of basically in general. And then also you can use the chat feature as well if you have just some not questions, but just insights or comments as well. But make sure to put your questions on the question and answer feature so that it's going to be easier for us to really look at them. So maybe just to frame the discussion for today, we're really doing this because we're living in exciting times. You know, there's a difference between 3 years ago and where we are now in New Zealand in terms of the emerging space industry locally, and it's really there's a huge difference. Space has been democratized by this disruptive technologies that is allowing the innovation to happen across all sectors. Today, the New Zealand space industry is valued at $1.7 billion with an opportunity to grow and contribute to the growing global space ecosystem. So the industry right now is no longer for rockets and rocket ships, but everything kind of like along that supply chain from upstream and downstream of the industry. And so with this in mind, there's a lot of opportunities for a diverse workforce of Kiwis who will increase over the next few years. Capacity building is then key to growing this ecosystem. And this will be done through like education as well as tapping into the different skills, cultures, and backgrounds to grow a sustainable space industry. So to bring about this opportunity for a diverse space workforce in New Zealand. So research provides compelling evidence that the diversity unlocks innovation, drives market growth, increased creativity, and creates better teams of problem solvers. In today's panel discussion, we'll definitely explore how diversity plays a role in creating opportunities for the industry and what are the needs and challenges that we have to do and address to make it equitable and fair for everyone interested in this particular like new space sector. So I just want to introduce our panelists for today. And so hold on for just one second. I just want to make sure whether Amy is not in the others in the attendee, and I have to actually promote her. So I don't see her at the moment. So let me introduce our panelists. Heather Deakin is a business development manager for Zira. Heather's career stems from a passion for aerospace and deep desire to create the very best value for customers. Heather studied for her MSc at Cranfield College of Aeronautics, including remote sensing and satellite imagery for the management of biological resources. After gaining her pilot's license, Heather built a career as an instructor, training military pilots in the UK before moving into operations management and business development. Heather immigrates to New Zealand in 2006 with her family, where she managed Safe Air and Airbus New Zealand before taking up a role with New Zealand's innovation agency, Callaghan Innovation. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Joshua Rea. He is responsible for business development at Dawn Aerospace and was the first non-engineer hired by the company. By the way, congratulations to the debut of your vehicle a few days ago.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. It's quite an exciting time at the moment. It's nice to be able to actually talk about it. So
great. So after spending nearly a decade expanding $100 million ad tech company into new global markets, Josh knows how to listen and how to provide solutions that solve problems. Once told to surround himself with smart people, Josh took this to the extreme and surrounding himself only with rocket scientists. Recognizing that space technology was stuck in an upward spiral of cost, waste, and toxicity that was unscalable and unsustainable, Josh joined Dawn in a bid to change this by helping bring the company's reusable spaceplane and sustainable propulsion products to market. Josh spends his spare time as a deep sea exploration diver, living life on Earth as closely as one can to an astronaut. Welcome, Josh.
Hi.
And also Kevin. Kevin Smith Hinge is a Master's of Policy and Governance student at the University of Canterbury, working on a project with Associate Professor Amy Fletcher. His research is based on producing a knowledge-based economy through space industry, a case of Vanuatu. He is interested in finding out whether Vanuatu could be used as a space hub for space-related startups. He holds a Master's of Education from Deakin University, a Bachelor of Arts from UC, and a Diploma in Secondary Education from the Vanuatu Institute of Teacher. Vanuatu Institute of Teacher. I think I bungled your information in here. His research interests are in the public debate of academic capitalism, social justice and education and innovation, space industry, and the knowledge economy. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
And I know that we don't have Amy at the moment, but I'm just going to go ahead and introduce her. So hopefully that she would join us in a few minutes. So Amy Fletcher is an associate professor of political science at the University of Canterbury and a professional tech futurist. Her areas of research and teaching expertise include science and technology policy, with a current emphasis on space sovereignty, commercialization, and public-private partnerships. She also lectures and gives public talks on contemporary United States politics and is a co-investigator on the Marsden-funded research project that investigates the global debate on the use and regulation of lethal autonomous weapons. She has lived in New Zealand since the early 2000s, but was born in Huntsville, Alabama, as her dad was then a young engineer working on the Apollo project. So as you can see, our panelist today is not your contemporary sort of space industry engineers or scientists. So I think now that we're talking about diversity, I think we can prove people wrong, even just with the people that are participating today with the discussion. So also before I start asking the first question, I just also wanted to point out that we talk about diversity, and it's probably good to clarify the definition of diversity. And so for us here, diversity really means a lot of different things, and it could be diversity in terms of ethnicity, gender, discipline and skills, culture and values, geographic location, mindset, and also in terms of wealth. So I guess I wanted to start from kind of like the industry, looking at the industry first. And so I guess my question is to frame the discussion is, let's talk about the current space environment. What new markets and trends do you think are creating new fields for a diverse workforce today? Anybody want to take a stab?
I'll kick it off. So from my perspective, the space industry covers a very broad span of capabilities, whether it's launching rockets or whether it's actually taking the data that is collected in space and doing something with it. So that means that there is opportunity for people right across the spectrum, from true engineering and design to people with business skills and data scientists, researchers to help us progress these capabilities. So if you want to get into the space industry, you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You can actually get into the industry with any skill set. It's just a question of finding the right avenue and the right company to work with.
Yeah, thanks, Heather.
The way we typically look at it is that the space industry as a whole is sort of at a stage that the internet industry was back in the 90s, that there was this boom that transformed traditional businesses in a way that they didn't know they could be transformed. And so with access to space becoming more prevalent, there's a range of different companies that are now starting to think different and seeing space-based applications as something very real for them. You know, farmers are getting their own satellites to come monitor their own piece of land. People are looking to space to do heat mapping of buildings, and I suppose what I'm getting at is that the industry as a whole is going to diversify, and that means that all companies are now going to be looking to space, and this means that I think we'll see diversity in a way that we can't quite imagine it at the moment, and that means that you need a diverse workforce to really put this forward.
Yeah, and again, just like kind of like thinking of what's happening today, just like what you said. I mean, the definition of the industry has actually changed. It used to be that we're only looking at hardware, and the launching and rockets are kind of like the sexy thing of what the industry was maybe like 10 or 20 years ago. Excuse me. But today there's the upstream and the downstream as well. That's kind of I think playing into the potential for having like a really different set of workforce, as opposed to like the traditional engineering and science that we are kind of like so used to.
Yeah, I think just to add on what Heather and Josh have articulated earlier on, once we look at the new market, there's some interesting stuff happening, and I agree with Heather. Space is a multidisciplinary industry that could employ people with different expertise right across the spectrum. You could get people from arts, people with arts qualification, commerce, STEM, environmental science, and so forth. But once we talk about the new market and new trends, things like space tourism, things like space diplomacy, things like space economy, space law, and the new space age, which provides that interesting piece around the geopolitical opportunities and challenges that we may bump into as we tap into those new trends. So Yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the near future. So it's going to be really, really interesting as we bring diversity into that equation of space. The industry itself demands a lot of people with different expertise and different skills from different ranges of sectors that we have today. Thank you.
Thanks. I guess a follow up to this, to the question as well, which is related, is that like besides being in general looking at the trends, what are the specific opportunities actually that you're seeing out there today that will need a wider talent pool?
I think from Xera's perspective, you know, we employ data scientists and software engineers largely. So those are the sort of skill sets that as we scale and grow, we will be looking for more. And those skill sets do reside within New Zealand, but they're sought after. So there's quite a bit of competition for those people with the best skills in those areas. And there's definitely a need for us to upskill or train the next generation through schools and universities to fill the demand that's going to come in the not too distant future.
Can I add to that as well, the question of what are those specific skill sets that you think will be needed for this new workforce?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you just take the vast number of satellites that are going up into space over the next 3 to 5 years, it's significantly increasing the commercial satellite pool. But those satellites are just gathering data, right? So that data has to serve a purpose, otherwise what's the point? And we've got to be able to do something smart with that data. So if you can manipulate data and you've got data science skills, you're going to be in significant demand in the space industry. And I'm just talking for Xera because we largely deal in that sort of part of the ecosystem. So specifically data science skills, and then being able to develop the algorithms to manipulate the data. So the big data analytics and machine learning skills are particularly what we would be looking for in the next few years.
And do you think as well that besides the fact that we do need to skill up, that those skills, are they already available, or are there already a workforce that is existing in New Zealand that's just basically using, you know, data science in a different industry, but then could potentially port it to the space industry?
We definitely have people who've joined Xera who haven't come from a space industry background and are just applying their skills in this new ecosystem. And I'd have to say there's a lot of interest when jobs are advertised. So the skills are there currently. However, it is a sort of fairly hotly contested pool. So across the industry, across the companies that need to employ those skills, there's a lot of competition. And, you know, we have aspirations to grow significantly. So as we scale up, it may be that we struggle to find the talent that we want. And we definitely need to be ensuring that there's a good, strong pipeline coming through the education system from New Zealand, because we absolutely can grow the talent here. We just need to cultivate it.
Yeah. Kevin and Joshua, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think what as Port hit in sort of this whole idea about education and training. I know that Auckland University has a sort of a space program, but we want to see more of those programs develop in New Zealand, and all the, you know, there's different universities in New Zealand, so we can actually use those programs and develop the talent that we want within the training, and sort of align the training with the related needs that we have out there in the field. and for someone, coming from Vanuatu already, I can see the essence of bringing that space education to the local people in Vanuatu and tell them that, look, there's an opportunity, given the realities that we have, the geographical realities that we have. Space could be a potential entity to look into in regards to the country's development. So yeah, education and training is one of the key areas that could be utilized for future development of the industry.
And talking about education and training, since you're from University of Canterbury as well, are there any specific courses or degrees that you see that the university is now offering that you think would be a good pathway for people who are not in the industry right now, but could potentially avail of those that are already existing programs?
Yeah, definitely. I think within the science department and even the STEM discipline, you've got program like astronautics or bioscience or biochemistry and all these science related disciplines. Like Heather was saying and Evetros was saying, we can have that skills and then bring that skills and implement it in the space related discipline. Having said that, there's also a need to design a specific space related program that sort of addresses the need that we could utilize, or even the projected need that we want as we project ourselves into the future. So there is need within the discipline as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
I can't speak too much on the technical engineering side of skills for the industry, but one thing that I think the industry has a problem with as a whole is a branding problem and communication and ability to tell good stories. Like most space companies that you look at, if you look at their logo, they're all blue. They all have a swoosh in them somehow.
Or that rocket that I see like in every kind of like the company logo.
Yeah, and it like JAXA, SpaceX, Orbital ADK, Lockheed, they all look the same. Everyone's telling the same story, and there's some really cool stories to tell, but people seem to be having trouble telling them. If you look at traditionally space companies, they also talk very technically, and there's a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms that are used, and it's I saw this a lot in the software industry as well. Like developers have trouble speaking in a way that is human. So as space proliferates, the stories that come from these companies need to be told in a way that the general public get and understand. There's quite often a hand-in-hand thing that, okay, we send something to space, it's a rocket, it falls in the ocean, it's bad for the environment. But actually, there's a lot of good that comes from this, and people will understand this through really good storytelling and PR, like you send something up, we've now got a satellite that can monitor shipping. Because we can monitor shipping, we can give more efficient directions that reduces the fuel usage by 20% globally, and hey, that's good for the planet. Or there's IoT providers that are, doing hyperspectral imagery. We can identify the best place to put fertilizer. Hey, that reduces fertilizer that we use. So yeah, I think storytelling to make people actually go, oh, this is kind of cool, and see a point of difference is an important skill that the industry needs that maybe isn't quite there at the moment.
And I think to just add to what Joshua was saying, that's why diversity is so important in our industry, right? Because I come from an aerospace background, having worked in aircraft engineering organizations for a long time, and they suffered the same fate, right? So everything looked the same, and it was all driven by technical people, and you didn't get the same sort of breadth of storytelling that you might like. And so by bringing in more diversity into our industry, we get those more fruitful stories, or more colorful stories, if you like, that help to inspire and spark the imagination. And the other specific skill, you were talking about specific skills, the other specific skill that really goes with that is the customer-facing skill sets. So one thing I've found in my career is that the technical people often don't really understand where the customer's coming from. They're very good at building a solution, solving an engineering problem or a technical problem, but what is it that the customer actually experiences, and what are their issues that we need to solve? And again, just using the morass of data that comes from satellites, the customer doesn't know what to do with all of that. So we have to really understand what their problems are, and then figure out, is there a way in which we can use this data to help them solve it? And so customer experience and user experience skills are really valuable in that sort of environment.
Yeah, it's interesting because my next question actually, you hit it on the head, which is like, why, if we kind of like step back, why is diversity really important in the space industry? So kind of in general.
I don't think it's specific to the space industry. It's important for any industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I sort of, sorry, Emily, I sort of said the same sentiment with George. It's once you bring in that diversity into the game, it diversifies the approach or the solutions to the problem, mm-hmm. and you don't have one way to solve it. So different people come in with different perspective, and that could actually accelerate or enhances production as well, because you've got a lot of diversity in that pool that could be used to solve a problem. So I think it's diversity is really key as we protect ourselves into the future.
Great, thanks. So actually, my next question then is like, how does diversity and, again, diversity as defined in many different levels play a role in your own organization?
We have quite a diverse cultural set, and as a result, it makes us a better company. We've got offices across 2 locations, and us as Kiwis here, we're pretty good at doing fast iteration cycles and getting stuff done. And if we want something, we'll just start building it and do a number 8 wire type of thing. But then over in Europe, we've got a lot of Germans and Dutch people, and they're very different in the way that they see the world. They want the last little bit of performance out of everything that they do. They want to analyze everything to the nth degree. And I suppose by combining these 2, we really see the best result, and we're able to work very fast, but not miss critical details. So for us, it's like having a diverse culture and viewpoint isn't something that we see as we have to deal with. It actually gives us a strategic advantage to be able to move a lot faster and get product out.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts, Heather, Kevin?
I think in Xera we have, we're a team of 18 at the moment, and it's a very diverse team in many respects, in that we have people from multiple different countries. So culturally we have a lot of diversity. And from the disciplines that we engage as well, we don't have lots of software engineers or lots of research scientists. We have a very cross-functional team. So when that team gets together and tries to solve problems, you do get those different perspectives, which is really great. That said, we're still lacking in diversity in some fields. So out of the 18, there's 4 women. There's 1 person from Asia, and the rest, including myself, are basically Pākehā from Western cultures. So, it's whilst we feel like we've got good diversity, we can still do better. And that would just, again, add to the robustness of the solutions that we're developing, or the ways in which we're trying to tackle some of the challenges that we face, because you do get that left field perspective, or you avoid that groupthink when you've got a wider range of people that you work with.
Yeah, I think just to add on, I had it's not actually related to space, but I had an intern role over the summer with the Ministry of Education in Wellington, and I was working with the education infrastructure, and I was tasked to do a systematic lit review on how we could incorporate Maori and Pacifica perspective into the physical designs of New Zealand classrooms. And I think that sort of the strength that I brought into that piece of work was sort of some of the realities that I've lived as a Pacific Islander. I've actually implemented that into the research, and it forces out, because of the experience that I've lived through, that I was able to document that piece and present it to the Ministry of Education. So I think diversity has a role, and it's really timely that we start looking into that whole notion of diversity and see what the possibilities are and what the strengths are and what we can gain from that. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks. And going maybe even further with the same question is that, can you give us, or maybe share a specific like instance when either what you did in in your organization, either a project or an instance that, you know, diversity played actually like a role for making your program or your project much better?
I can't think of a particular project so much, but the way in which we collaborate within Xera is very inspiring, and it's having the tools to enable people from across the organisation, albeit we're small, but the multidisciplinary approach to collaborate on proposals, as an example, has been really quite revealing for me, because in my previous roles, whilst we've talked about collaborating, we haven't truly done it. And to be using something like Google Docs when there's 5 people all contributing, and you're writing something and then somebody else comes in and makes a suggestion, and then someone else chips in an idea and another person puts a comment on, and you go, oh, I never thought of that. And so a proposal we worked on recently and submitted was transformed by the fact that we had multiple people participating simultaneously, if you like, to create this document. So to me, it's really important that we have the right tools and mechanisms to enable diverse thought to be brought to bear when we're either solving problems or doing our day-to-day business. It's been really useful in that respect.
Thanks.
I suppose the diversity in my background has helped shape our messaging and the way we present our values as a company. Instead of saying, this is our product, this is what it does, it has an ISP of 285 seconds, do you like it, buy it? We've come away and said, okay, well, instead of just pushing a product, we're going to talk around the values of who we are as a company, so that it reaches a wider audience. And as a result, we came with this idea of, well, we analyzed all the different types of competitors and stuff in the market, and the messages that they are pushing, and everyone was like, oh, we want to build a cheaper rocket. We can build a rocket much faster, or this type of thing, where this didn't really sit well with us, because it's just more debris and more stuff. So we came with the idea of we want to create a circular space economy. And through coming at the viewpoint of what do people care about, or what's important to people, through that lens, instead of just an engineer's lens to it, we're able to get like a message that we think is quite good. It encompasses everything that we do. It encompasses the values, and talks around the larger vision, but then also what each of our products do. You know, like the spaceplane literally goes in a circle and comes back and it's circular, or the propulsion that we do goes up and enables it to come back down, so it's circular. So that was quite good. Yeah.
I'm actually kind of also curious about, because you mentioned in your bio that you're the first person in Dawn that was actually hired that's not an engineer, and so how has that changed sort of the organization when you kind of like you came in and with a different background from kind of like the rest of the team? Can you give us a little bit more of an insight on that?
I suppose the organization has changed through our branding and marketing collateral, and how we have our public facing a little bit, I suppose. I'd say that's the major one. So done most of been involved in the way that we present ourselves externally. So yeah.
Cool.
I suppose it's hard to say, right? Like if I sit back here, I don't know what the result of the company would be if I wasn't here. And the team is really good. And so I'm sure they would have found their way anyway without me. Yeah.
Maybe, I think I doubt that, but how about you, Kevin?
I think once you look at the international space arena that we have, especially with the establishment of United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, it provides a platform for international partnership. And I think that's where that diversity comes in. And it, I don't have any specific examples to build on from the organization, but being able to see the provision, it provides an avenue where we could collaborate together for the common good of, either my organization or your organization, but there's provision within the discipline that offers for us to dialogue. And the UN, the United Nations Office of Space Affairs, actually provided that. And recently, I think there's a lot of international collaborations between public and even private entity that contributed to this whole idea of democratizing space, and it makes space industry such very much accessible to the public. And I think that provision gives us the assurance that yes, diversity is required in this industry. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks.
Maybe just thinking again, you asked around the impact that I might have had. One of the big things recently is around sort of pushing our messaging outward out of the organization and sort of outsourcing some of the stuff that we've done. So we recently ran this initiative that was quite involved in, was this paint our plane
Yes.
competition that we did, where we tried to get a lot of engagement with people outside of the company. Instead of us just saying, this is what it's going to look like, we said, hey, we're good at building stuff. We may not be the best at designing stuff. Instead of us saying, this is what it's going to look like, how about you tell us? And that gave a really good response, actually. So it led to all further forms of community outreach. We've got all these planes and stuff behind us. So we ran a competition of coloring and competitions as well. And we had kids from all over the world telling stories of how this type of thing inspired them, and telling stories of what they would do if they got to send something into space, and what they thought is important around, views of sustainability and accessing and all this sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. So all of us, of course, we all agree that diversity is really important, not just for this particular industry, but like in general as well. But the reality is that there are still, a lot of challenges that that is happening like today, and we're kind of like we're not at the ideal stage of where we want to be. So can you identify some of those challenges that need to be overcome that's kind of like happening today within New Zealand?
Yeah, I can talk. I saw I don't know, it was something in a magazine the other day, and it was talking about the percentage of women pilots in airlines around the world. And I was absolutely shocked at how few there are today in most of the airlines of the world. And even Air New Zealand, which I think is reasonably good at encouraging diversity, is still a very low percentage. I mean, we're talking 3 or 4% in most flag carriers around the world. And that's in aviation, which is a very long history, never mind space. So I think there's definitely a challenge for us to motivate girls to participate in STEM subjects and to get more involved in the space industry, because it's absolutely available for anybody to participate in, and there's such a wide range of skill sets that are needed in the industry as it grows. But it would be it would be a tragedy if we weren't able to encourage our youngsters and our girls particularly to get involved and go through their education in STEM subjects so that they can be more involved in some of the aspects of space. And that's definitely something I'd like to see more of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose we we have a challenge on finding women as well. Like it's a reality, and we know that, if we end up as a company that just hires young white dudes, we're going to have a real problem as we start to scale. So we're having these conversations now on like, what can we do to be proactive in changing this? Because if we grow to, at the moment we're here in Christchurch between 15 and 20, when we start to grow, and we will, people outside our demographic, they're going to come in here and they're not going to feel welcome. And as we take this company and we start to expand it globally, others aren't going to feel welcome or want to work with us or feel like they fit, and we're going to see ourselves in a real problem, and we're going to miss out on a huge chunk of available talent, and we're going to start looking for certain skills. But when people come in and interview and sit with us, they're not going to feel like they actually belong. So we're trying to be very conscious of setting a culture right at the start, of ensuring that this isn't just a boys' club, and thinking of ways that we can also inspire youth to see as a whole, and not just boys, but as a whole, see that this is an industry that they can actually be part of. When I was at school, or when I was a kid, you go, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there was like 3 answers. It's like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an accountant. And people never really, and maybe they'd say, oh, I want to be an astronaut, but it was a far-fetched dream. It was never, you grow up and you quickly get that squashed, and that's not a reality. So we want to do things that can make people actually really believe that this is an accessible industry to be part of. This is like one small thing here. A major thing that we did, which was quite nice, is that the first payload that we're flying on the Mark II, in its own right, and it's an amazing experiment because it aligns with our values, but we awarded the first flight of a payload on the vehicle to the St. Taurus High School Physics Club. It's 50%. It's 50% women, it's 50% guys, but they're high school students. They're 17-year-olds, and they're sending something that used to be reserved only with millions of dollars, and you had to go through the military or NASA or whatever. And we're going to be flying an experiment for them multiple times. And the idea here is to show them that this is something that's real, it's accessible. And as we continue our sort of community outreach programs, we want to keep doing this, like showing the youth that this is something that is a real viable thing for them to get into.
It's great.
But there is a systemic problem.
I do think we need to inspire kids, and you really need to inspire them quite early. So, from as early as 7, I think the research shows that if you can capture their imagination at that age, then they're more likely to study STEM subjects in their teens. If you don't catch them early, then they take the easy subjects or take the art subjects. So we do need to motivate young people in STEM subjects. And, the other thing is the accessibility for a wider range. Although I talked about girls, we're also lacking in the Maori and Pacifica students coming through those subjects as well. So, we need to encourage and motivate and enable those people to come through the education system so that they've got the skills, and then make sure that our systems and processes don't allow biases to prevent them from getting access.
Yeah.
And I suppose this all starts with a discussion and telling stories, right? And with panels like this, and with diversity-specific programs and scholarships. There's some good examples. I reckon the Hidden Figures movie about the NASA HQ was like a great way to reach this. There's also some cool things that I've been seeing recently, like the On Orbit podcast. They seem to be having a very targeted viewpoint of showing that space is accessible for young women. Like the last 3 that have been put out. One was of a 16-year-old girl called Julie Sage. She's an aspiring astrophysicist, and then gets the forum to be able to talk about this. And then when young women see this, they go, oh, okay, and they can relate to it. There's another one about keeping space green with a girl called Luke Reisberg, who works on space policy. And then there's other ones. The past 3 have been young women talking about their experiences. And so people then relate and see that, oh, okay, I can do this. There's some cool diversity-specific programs that we're putting our hand up to try to be involved in. It's kind of exclusive, and we're sort of trying to batter down the hatches to get in there. But there's like the Brooks Owen Scholarship. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this. It's a scholarship specific in the US that takes women and places them in internships in aerospace companies. Rocket Lab are doing a really good thing with their scholarships for local Mahi students. I saw that every one of these that have been awarded so far have been awarded to women. There was something recently that I saw Dr. Chris Hahn, a professor over at UC, he did this Women in Engineering workshop where there was a whole bunch of Year 12 female students that were taken through to show about rocketry and show that this is accessible. And I'm not sure how popular it is here, but like SpaceX, NASA, Tesla, and the likes are really trying to push this Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day, which is part of the National Engineers Week. And I think they're trying to make it an annual thing, which I'm going to put our hand up to be involved with this year. It seems quite a cool thing to do. But February 22nd is that. How do we inspire young women to show them that, hey, this isn't just a boys' club?
Yeah, those are really great ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm happy the discussion is sort of panning towards that end, because that it touches on 2 of the key findings of my project. Contextualizing space into Vanuatu. One key theme that stemmed out of what the project I did was the importance of space awareness. That we need to promote space within younger generations, so we can bring in the right talents into the industry, as Heather and Joseph said, and nurture them throughout their career. And with that space awareness, we also need space education. If we could incorporate space-related curricula as early as primary and secondary school, that will become handy as they move further into the sort of the abstractation of STEM as Heather rightly said. And I think there's an element that I wanted to touch on. If we could sort of put the competition aspect of it aside and look at the capabilities or the capacity building around the industry, I think that would enhances the idea of bringing in a lot of female into the industry. Because once we start looking at the competition side, then it equates to that economic value that we bring in.
Mm-hmm.
But building that capacity around space should be the core of embracing and cultivating that diversity within the industry.
Yeah.
I saw one of the questions was asking, does diversity include older people, of course, as well? And of course it does, yes. I mean, diversity, to me anyway, is all embracing, and it's what you're really after is people who can just bring a different perspective, and they have a different perspective because they either have a different background or they come from a different place or they bring different experiences with them. I think what we do see though is and I certainly saw this in my previous roles within aerospace, is the gaps really are in the gender diversity and women in particular, but also the Pacifica and Maori populations. The ethnic minorities are not absolutely represented in organisations typically in this industry. Mm. And as a new and emerging industry in New Zealand, we have the opportunity to from the outset make sure that we are embracing diversity in all its forms throughout our sort of maturity. We want to make sure that we get it right from the start and not have to play catch up later like the rest of the world is having to do in more traditional industries.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And so I guess my other question here is like going more macro. What do you see is the role of organizations like government or academia in creating these opportunities or these changes that kind of like need to be done to make sure that we do have the right workforce and diverse workforce for New Zealand?
Kevin made the point earlier about making sure we have the right programs through our schools and universities that cover the skills that are actually going to be needed by industry and not just generic skills, but also the sort of programs that are going to prove interesting to people. That said, you know, when my daughter and son went to university and I started looking at the courses they were going to do, I thought, oh, I could go back to university and study all of those as well. So they are offering some interesting programs, but are they offering programs, whether it's space specific or that generate the skills that the space industry needs? That's what we need to make sure that the universities, academia and government is making sure that foundation is there.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of companies now being proactive in in setting specific metrics on diversity. You know, like there are tech companies over in the US, they're very much saying like, okay, these are the specific goals that we want to meet for diversity across our organization of gender, ethnicity, skill set, etc. It would be good for university and government to potentially do the same. You know, like we're down here in Christchurch. Majority of the people that we hire are the engineers. The fact is, 5 to 10%, maybe around that, I don't know the exact stats, of women within an engineering class. It's about 5 to 10% of people within an engineering class are women. Mm-hmm. So it means just on the outset, it's the biases towards males. If we look here in the population of Christchurch, something like, I put up the stats earlier today from the census. Now, it is from 2018, but it's 78% are European.
Mm.
Auckland, on the other side, is 54%. So it's a lot harder for us being down here in Christchurch to diversify than it would be if we were up in Auckland. So if there was a city initiative that they sort of put diversity on the table and made a priority, then I think it would help.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I know personally, I never liked the idea of quotas, if you like, and I never wanted to be considered that I'd be employed because I met a quota.
Right.
I wanted to be employed because of my merit. So eliminating bias is important, because we all do have natural biases, and so we want to make sure that our recruitment systems don't allow us to act on those biases, but to focus on objectively selecting the best person for the role. That said, the evidence is quite clear that women and ethnic minorities are underrepresented in a lot of our industries. And so to help overcome that, we do need to tilt the playing field in their favour somewhat. And I guess rather than recruiting to a quota, maybe it's more about the system that enables those people to be represented in a fair and transparent way. So one method that I've seen used is to completely take out of the applications any evidence of gender, etc. So that's helping to remove the opportunity for bias, and that apparently does make a difference. And then the other is making sure that when you are recruiting, that you kind of try and select a shortlist with an equal number of or a representative proportion of women and ethnic minorities. Now, that's not always easy to achieve, because I know that companies will put out adverts and then they don't get any women apply. So I know some companies also will just keep advertising until we do. Maybe we have to question where we're advertising and what our adverts say, because they're not necessarily appealing to women and ethnic minorities. But those are just some thoughts from me. I never really liked quotas myself, but I think perhaps we need something to help tilt the playing field in the favour of women and minorities.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think how we position the job descriptions is important. There was a quote from yesterday's one saying that men apply to positions if they reach about 60% of the requirements, yet women will only apply if they hit about 90%. So if you make the requirements a little bit more generic and favourable for more people to apply, then I think it's an easy thing for us as a company to do.
I know one company in Australia, actually, a friend of mine was recruiting for pilots, and they were desperate to try and get some women to apply. It was actually a cadetship program they were recruiting for. And in the first stage, they had quite a few women apply, so they were really excited. But then the next stage of recruitment, they asked people to respond to questions by video. So you had to pre-record a video with you responding to these questions, and none of the women applied. And they were just shocked. So their recruitment process somehow eliminated this group of potential candidates who were on the first cut perfectly capable of going through the process. So we do need to critically look at how we're recruiting for different parts of the population.
Yeah,
I think from where I come from someone from a Pacifica ethnicity, I think information and knowledge is power. The people out there, they don't know the know-how to get there, if I can say that. I remember I did an educational awareness a few years ago back in my local community, and after the presentation, an old man walked up to me and said, "Look, if I had known this presentation 20 years ago, I would have sent someone to uni. I would have sent one of my child to university." So the fact that they don't know how to get there is sort of a stumbling block to be able to navigate the spaces in those areas that we're talking about. So for me, I kind of see information as a necessity to empowering, women or girls or even individuals from ethnic minority to be able to tap in those in the spaces that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Kevin, do you have any recommendation on specifically what are those types of programs or initiatives that can disseminate information better?
I have within my reintegration plan to go home and sort of try and start the discussion from a bottom-up approach, try and talk to the people and get, understand their gut feelings about, what is their perceptions about space industry. Because I kind of felt like nobody knows that industry ever exists, although we are using the applications of the industry, but we don't actually understand the nuts and bolts of that. So I see awareness, but awareness more from a bottom-up approach, as opposed to top-down. As George has mentioned previously, things like space cam or space essay writing, come up with a space topic or space theme and give it to the primary or secondary students to do a competition in it. Mm-hmm. And that could sort of, give them an idea of, oh yeah, this is what the industry is about. And that could start cultivate their interest towards developing a career path in the industry.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I think maybe we can go to the some of the questions from the audience. So let me see. So there's one question here concerning diversity of backgrounds and experience. Could New Zealand have an advantage to help connect with users of space applications, space data experts who have farming backgrounds, as an example?
I'm not sure I see that as a specific advantage when I consider that the use of satellite data for agricultural purposes is probably already well ahead of New Zealand internationally. Where we do have an advantage, though, is we are just a country of 5 million people. And actually, we should be able to connect and collaborate way more than other countries do. And I do remember we had a review when I was working at Callaghan Innovation, and there was a chap there who was part of the review panel from the UK, and he was involved in the catapults in the UK, which are sort of innovation government organisations helping to support innovative companies, etc. And he made the comment, that they find it really difficult. They've got something like 13 catapults around the UK, and they find it really difficult to collaborate. But here we are in New Zealand with all the same capabilities largely, but in a much smaller space and in a much smaller pool of people, with only 2 degrees separation. So collaboration is our real advantage compared to other countries, I think, and we really don't make full use of that.
Yeah, this question actually reminded me of a question that was asked yesterday and also the other day of looking at diversity as diversity of location, which then there's different regions within New Zealand right now that are working to potentially create their own space industry base. And so I guess my question is this kind of like, will this help create this sort of like national strategy for a space industry, or would it sort of help segment it? Because just as an example, in Australia right now, there's a lot of like competition between the different states, of which everybody's like competing for the same funding, the same like talent pool and so forth. And hoping that doesn't happen to New Zealand. Do you have any thoughts about kind of like how do we help the different regions in New Zealand actually be part of this industry, but at the same time be collaborative, as Heather was like talking about?
Yeah, I think, and because I was on the panel on 2 nights ago, and my comment was the same then, and that is, I'm not a believer in the regionalization, if you like. I do feel in New Zealand particularly that we are much better working as New Zealand Inc. And collaborating irrespective of which region we're in. And sure, different regions may have the ability to create some specialization around a particular core either company or skill sets that they happen to have, you know. But if we try and make Christchurch the place where this happens and Auckland the place where that happens, we're losing out a lot of opportunity as a nation of 5 million people to collaborate right across the country. So that's certainly my suggestion, is that we find a way of collaborating more and not focusing so much on a regional basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, New Zealand's small. You can hop on a plane and you'd be anywhere in the country in like 45 minutes or an hour. Like, I'm not sure what we would gain from splitting it up. New Zealand as a whole is positioning itself really well and starting to get international awareness. The space agency's got this line of, you know, want to be the best location in the world for new space, the most ideal location for new space in the world, and like it is. It really is. And then companies are going to be looking here and then choosing the best place to suit their needs, you know, because I think we need to work together to be able to accommodate and supply a full range. Doesn't matter if it's in Christchurch or Auckland or in Chicago or wherever.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we have an advantage of, you know, being way down here and at the southern hemisphere with, you know, with our air traffic not that busy. And with, you know, we're talking about launching stuff that is quite a gain for us to look into. But at the same time, as I've mentioned earlier on, if we start seeing that capacity building or capability building as a means to move forward, and as Heather stated about collaboration, then we could actually utilize the skill sets and the expertise that we have here in New Zealand. So it does look promising for New Zealand as a country.
Yeah, that's great. So there's another question here, I guess, for Joshua. And I know you mentioned the space plane project earlier, but I guess the question is, can you describe some of the contributions and the art submissions on the wall? That seems an example of reaching out to the public for a diverse range of inputs. Yeah.
So the pictures on the wall are just from school students. They're not the applications that we had for the actual vehicle. We had a really cool range of applicants to paint the actual vehicle, and we got a lot of different viewpoints coming through. Influences. We had a guy from Rotorua called Baxter. He submitted one, and for example, it had the flag of planet Earth on it, and we thought that was a really cool thing. It talked, you know, you've got the overview effect where the biggest thing around going to the moon was you got to look back and see that we're one planet and you know, it's all we've got. So the idea at the moment is that there's no one symbol that unifies all of humanity. And when we go to Mars, it's not appropriate that we put a flag down as the USA, or we put a flag down as Russia, or a flag as New Zealand, or whoever. Like, it's a world collaborative effort to get to wherever it is that we're going. So we should be putting down a flag of planet Earth. And Baxter was sort of quick to point out this. And so we adopted that on the vehicle itself. So we've got 3 flags on here. We've got 2 offices, one New Zealand, one in the Netherlands, and sort of split 50-50, but then we put this 3rd flag, the flag of planet Earth, up there to show that although this may have been developed mainly across these 2, it's a lot of the technology that's been put into it has come from all over the world, and so it's a symbol to represent all of humanity, which is quite nice. Yeah, that was a cool little input thing that we had.
That's great.
Yeah, that's, you know, yeah, and there are a few others, but I think that was a nice example.
That's awesome. So I have I also have like one question, essentially, what do you what would your advice be or recommendation to anybody who's listening now, and then when we actually we share this video later on, to people who are not the traditional aerospace or science background people who are really interested in space, but doesn't really know how to kind of like create that opportunity. What would your advice and recommendation be for those people?
I went to university. I studied accounting, property, and commercial law. And then I left that and I said, oh, I don't want to be an accountant and everything else is sort of boring. I'm going to go work and learn how to start businesses up. And I suppose, and then I did that and ended up working in media. I got really into endurance cycling. I became sort of like a semi-professional endurance cyclist for a while, and then I got really into diving. I started doing deep sea exploration diving. I became a marriage celebrant. So I suppose the point is, like, if you're interested in something and you want to geek out about it, just go for it and get obsessed with it and go to the nth degree, and then you'll eventually find something that's unique for you and you'll diversify your skill set. I know it's a story that's been told a lot, but like Steve Jobs was like fascinated in font. And so he went and studied font for a long time, and then it brought in this ability to, his ability to create different fonts within Word, which sort of differentiated and put them far apart. So I'd say on a personal level, just geek out onto whatever you're into. And then when it comes to, also don't take no for an answer. Like, I had never worked in the space industry. I saw this company, I thought it was really cool. I went directly to the top. I called up one of the managers, like the founders, and progressively started a long-term sales pitch on him for him to like give me a job. He said no to me 3 different times. I continued to persevere. Eventually, and I found out why he was saying no at each time. It turned out that we have a limited set of customers. Reputation is very big. We don't want you to go talk and say one of the wrong things. It's like, okay, sweet. Right, I'll go teach myself Space 101. So I went and taught myself Space 101. In the meantime, it's like, oh, by the way, do you want a free website? I'd learned how to build websites, so I built him a website, and then he was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, would you like me to do some writing for you? We did some grant applications. We won these grant applications because of, and so I'd say persevere whatever you're interested to, no matter what people say and how weird some people may think it is. Don't take no for an answer, and then just employ creative thinking. Like, find out why people are saying no, and then come at it from a different angle. And yeah, cool. Now I'm working for a space company.
And before I ask Heather and Kevin, just one quick question, which is I guess related, is that, I mean, is Dawn Aerospace hiring right now? Because like, there's a question here about who's actively hiring besides Rocket Lab.
Yeah, we hired 1 person last week. We've got another 2 joining next week. We're actively hiring.
Great.
Yep.
I think we've got an advert up as well. Yeah, great story there, Joshua. I really like that. And you know, for me, I never planned any of my career. It just kind of happened, and it happened, I think, the way it did because I was ready to take opportunity when opportunity arose. And I created a lot of opportunity because, you know, you pursue your passions and you keep your eye out and you connect with people who kind of have an interest in the area that you're interested in. So then things just seem to materialize. So it's not magic, it is hard work. You create your own luck. I absolutely believe in that. But, you know, opportunities come and you have to be ready to take them. So you don't have to plan a whole career out. Even if you did, it would probably end up going in a completely different direction to what you thought, which is what happened to me. But if you want to try and create those connections, and they are important, if you can create a personal connection with somebody in the industry, it's a big help to try and find your way in. And so my advice there is to, you know, go and walk the streets to find those people. So either through your family or your friends family, or, you know, as Joshua did, ring someone, and you'll be surprised actually how often somebody will try and reach out and help you. I mean, I've had people contact me and try and find ways into different industries, and I'll always try and give them a leg up if I can, especially if they, you know, are new or a student trying to find their way. So, you know, reach out to people, and although it's hard when you're younger, particularly, to ask the questions because you might feel shy or lacking in confidence or not have the knowledge to be listened to, people will naturally want to help. So yeah, get out there and reach out to people, find those connections, and try and find something personal that connects you to the person you're trying to link to.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, I think I sort of agree with Heather and Josh about, you know, creating that opportunity, creating the passion, and get right into what, you know, you wanted to do. I am a teacher by profession, and I never anticipate being in a space discussion. I came in, as I was presenting this morning, I came in to do sort of a project around education, institutional management, how we could manage institution better. But then I bumped into this discussion of space, and it was like, I was just clink into it. And I was like, well, let me look into it. And I started reading, and I started talking to people and stuff, and engaging in opportunities like this. It starts to diversify the opportunities that one could tap in within the industry. So yeah, I totally agree with the other two panelists. You know, if opportunities arise, get it. And if someone says no, please don't take no for that answer. Keep pursuing what you believe in, and keep, you know, whatever you're passionate about, keep doing it. You'll basically at the end see the light down the tunnel.
Thank you, Kevin. So I know we have just a few minutes left. Maybe to kind of like wrap up, do any of you have any closing thoughts or remarks that you'd want to share to the audience?
I think it's been a good discussion tonight, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope that people listening in have got something from it as well. Just a simple message, you know, if you want to be involved in the space industry, there's opportunity. So try and get stuck in, reach out to people if you want to find a way in. If you're really passionate about it, you'll find your way.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, I'd say the space industry is definitely going to need a diverse talent pool, and companies aren't built only by engineers. You know, there's all facets. You know, you might be working in a space industry, but it doesn't negate from the fact that it's still a company, right? And companies, to be successful, need all sorts of skills. You need finance, funding, market validation, understanding your customers, HR, sales, like actual employing sales process. And it doesn't matter if you're selling a toothbrush or a rocket motor. I think the process of selling stuff is still essentially the same. And so understand that it is not an accessible market. This is going to this industry is going to continue on and grow like the internet did, and or still is, and we can't quite imagine the type of companies and industries that are going to come out of it as a result. So yeah, get into it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'll respond to one of the questions that came in from Lindsay. I think he's interested in finding out what the space industry looks like in Vanuatu. I think we currently have one space industry that is a Singaporean-based company, but they're looking into providing broadband internet to the remote areas in Vanuatu. And we've had the discussion with the CEO about how we could cultivate or how we could promote the whole industry in Vanuatu. And that's one of the things that I'm interested in, sort of when I get back home. That's one of the things that we could do. And the other thing is about the possibility of establishing the National Space Agency for Vanuatu. And I think that's it's a big task ahead, but I could use that as a possible doctorate topic to come back to New Zealand and have a look at how we could, build that into a national space agency, and then maybe possibly a ministry of science, technology, and innovation, something along those lines. But yeah, I think the final remarks tonight is, this industry is gaining momentum, and it's really growing, and it's gonna build out to a sort of $1 trillion project within the next few years. So the future is exciting, and for you out there who is passionate about space, please talk to people. Talk to people who share the same passion, so they could sort of support you and encourage you into tapping into the opportunities that the industry might provide in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Well, I really learned a lot as well, and so thank you so much for our panelists today. Thanks, Heather, Joshua, and Kevin. Really unfortunate that we didn't get Amy, but I think this was really a very fruitful discussion, and really appreciate all of your thoughts and recommendations. Before we close, though, I also want to thank our partners for putting on this panel session for TechWeek. For one, TechWeek as a platform for making this kind of like happen. There's also other organizations that kind of like helped us as well. So the New Zealand Student Space Association in Christchurch chapter for this particular panel session for actually coming up with the theme. So they were the ones who thought about diversity as a theme for the space industry. So that was really great. And they also helped kind of market and publicize the panel. And since this is the last panel on the series too, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the previous moderators, Yen Kai Chen, who is the Space Generation Advisory Council representative in New Zealand, who is based in Auckland, and then also Julia Rotman from the Space Enthusiasts and Professionals Meetup Group in Wellington. Also the New Zealand Space Student Association in Wellington, which is the Wellington branch as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this past 3 days, and for our audience for today. I hope the session has given you some inspiration to consider the growing space industry as a career path, no matter what background you have or no matter what skills and gender and culture that you may belong to. This is really a fast growing industry, and there's just so much opportunity that's gonna come down the pipeline that I think New Zealand is gonna play a really pivotal role, I think, in kind of like the global space industry. And I'm just like excited to see what the next like 5 years is gonna, or 5 to 10 years, and what's gonna happen. So kia ora and good night to everybody.
One last thing before we go.
Yes.
The New Zealand Student Space Association in Christchurch, I had a look on their website today. 50% of them are women. They're doing an amazing job.
Yeah,
I'm very proud.
Actually,
if they'd like to come check out what we do, get in touch, and we'd love to give you a little bit of a tour.
oh, that's a great offer. Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
Well, again, thanks, Heather, Joshua, and Kevin. It's been a pleasure discussing with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.